Hi, I'm Kendra, also known as the Shakespanderian, and I don't usually live here, but hello! I am here to talk about something starting with the letter G, and let me just say that my title is Giving. The fact that you were still here after that joke tells me we should probably be friends, but also today I'm talking about The Giver by Lois Lowry. So if you don't know, The Giver is a classic young adult middle grade book that was originally published in 1993. While there are 4 books in this series, The Giver functions as a standalone novel. And it should come as no surprise that the novel is better than the movie, even though they went and dragged Taylor Swift into it. Depending on when and where you went to school, this may have been required reading for you, or maybe it was banned in your district. The most common citations for banning said book is sexuality and violence. This book is honestly shockingly intense and morbid. So throughout the book, we are following a soon-to-be and then becomes 12-year-old Jonas in this utopian world, which, as we can suspect from most utopians, it's actually a dystopia in disguise. There's no war, there's no pain, fear, suffering, hatred, none of the negativity. But as we come to expect of most utopian societies, there is a very sinister vibe hidden underneath all of this great connectedness. And the first red flag is that there is no choice. At 12 years old, kids are given their lifelong assignments of this is the job that you will have for the rest of your life. What is particularly amazing about this book is how much is packed into a very short novel. It's only 225 pages. And it's not like it's tiny print either. This is written like a middle grade book. And the writing is really digestible too. Again, it's a middle grade book. It blows my mind how much is happening in such a small space while still being intensely digestible. The language is definitely not super flowery. If you are the kind of person who loves the super flowery, kind of elaborate language, this book doesn't do that so much. However, there are a lot of little gems hidden throughout here. There are especially a lot of biblical references that I think they're subtle enough that it doesn't scream biblical reference, but if you pay attention to it, it's definitely there. So kind of a breakdown of the story structure. The first half of the book, which amazes me that it's the first half of the book, it's a lot of world building. It's a lot of establishing this is the norm of society, which I think is really important because it creates that direct contrast when we hit the second half of the book and seeing pretty much the entirety of this utopia crumbling before Jonas's eyes. This is not a story of society changing so much as the main character realizing what kind of world they are living in. Considering the length of the novel, I would say that it has kind of a slow build-up, but it's very fitting, and I'm just saying slow as a comparative to the overall length of the novel. And once we get going, we are going and going and going. So if you are a fan of young adult, and especially young adult dystopias, I feel like The Giver is a book that you should definitely read if you haven't. I feel like this particular book is the foundation of a lot of contemporary dystopian novels. I read this and I can see how this would go on to inspire books like The Hunger Games and Divergent and The Uglies. This book walked so that all of those other dystopian novels could run. The main issue that I have with this book is that it plays up like it is very realistic. Especially the first half, I can fully imagine a society operating in the way that it does in the world of The Giver. Everything feels like it could be real. Everything feels like this could actually happen, which I think is part of what makes dystopian stories generally so interesting and terrifying, is that they produce this social commentary in a way that feels like this could happen, this could be our future. And especially in terms of the dystopians that I've already listed, such as The Hunger Games, where a lot of the issues are systemic. Society has become this corrupt machine. I feel like there are slightly different expectations for, say, a post-apocalyptic dystopia, but I digress. So my issue is when we reach the second half of the story, where things really start to pick up and we start to uncover what is so dystopian about this utopia. and we're finding this sort of magical realism element. It definitely threw me through a loop. I was a little disappointed when it first started happening. As we get further into the story, we start to realize that there is maybe a little bit more of that magical realism happening in the first half than we maybe initially expected. But I definitely was not going through the first half expecting what was going to happen in the second half, which could be a good thing depending on what you're looking for out of a book. But I do think it's important to recognize that it does kind of have that turn that kind of feels like almost a shift in the genre. It definitely threw me off. It does make me appreciate how short the book is, because I do feel like if it were longer, I would have just not finished it, because I was not feeling the change, especially when I was reading it. But I think it does work as an experiment for what you can do in a piece of fiction and how you can sort of change the genre midway through in a way that is effective. I was still with it. Like, I wasn't confused about what was happening. It was more just sort of me being thrown through a loop of why did we take this shift? And that is totally my own personal taste. Other people might feel completely different, and I think that is perfectly fine. So don't let that steer you away from this book. It's giving a lot of social commentary in a really digestible way, in a way that doesn't feel like it's pushing any kind of agenda. I think the biggest part of the message of this book is that we do need to remember our history, even the bad parts, even the parts that we want to repress, because that is part of what makes the human experience the human experience. Having a choice is important to being a people. Being able to make the wrong choices is important to being a people. That is, how we grow and develop and be people. So if it's not obvious, I would definitely recommend this book if you haven't read it, or if you did read it, but it was like required reading back in high school or middle school, revisit it. It is, again, a very short book. You could read it pretty easily in an afternoon. I think I ate this book in about 3 hours. This is a book that you should try for yourself. Anyways, thank you for hanging out with me, and if you would like to hang out with me some more, I do have my own channel. It is a bit more eclectic. Sometimes I do talk about books and writing, and other times I am crocheting dinosaurs and talking about piercings. So we have fun over there, but in either case, thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I hope you have a lovely day and enjoy the rest of the alphabet series, and I will see you hopefully eventually. Okay, bye-bye! You're so far away. Okay.